Uh-oh.
Just had too much fun.
We have a big waiting room.
Get some attendance here. It's already November. Good morning, everybody, everywhere. Greg's got the back half there, holding the fort down. Everybody's with you in spirit or actually just at home. See, we got Jackie. And Tori. Oh, there's Don. Well, I think we've got everybody, one place or another. Let me save that. Last week I didn't save after all of the attendancing. Check the chat here. Good morning, everybody. Take a look at Canvas and see where we are. I had to do some completing of things as a student to make sure I could get to everything. So we're in lesson 11. I wanted to kind of take a look at lesson 10 before we move on though and make sure we're good there. We're still working with our database stuff, so we're going to continue trying examples and working on things in class and giving you lab time here so that you can work on things in case you run into any questions or problems. Nobody's mentioned any trouble getting connected to the database server, so that's good. I know you're doing a lot of work at home. It's a lot easier to get connected to those Amazon web servers at home than it is here at OTC. Your assignment this week is that family table with selection, and the videos should show you pretty much how to get that set up. You're going to use, if you want, a data source, so it should be real fast and easy to get set up. If we have time at the end of our session, our section on databases, what we'd like to do at one point is compare running a data source type application where we load things up dynamically, automatically, letting Visual Studio do it, versus the application where we do everything manually. The big difference is going to be when we do everything manually in our CRUD application that we created last week. Remember, we connect to the database, we select all of the rows, and then we disconnect. So while all that data is sitting on the screen, we don't have an actual connection to the database management system. If we use a data source like this, and makes it really fast and quick and easy to put together, but if we do that data source, we'll see that that connection remains open while the user is looking at that data. So we can theoretically have read locks on all of those rows so that they would not be updatable by someone else. So that can cause some contention in our database, sort of an advanced topic, but I want you to understand that there are some behind the scenes reasons that we prefer that old kind of CRUD style application. So the data source, using the data source that's dynamic in Visual Studio is a really, really cool thing. And we want to make sure everybody's gotten a chance to look at that. We got other stuff coming up. Dr. Ford is making some announcements on Discord about just schedules and things, some things that we need to be thinking about. On the calendar, if you have your calendar, if you could make a note that November 18th, let me find the month here. So this Wednesday before Thanksgiving break, that's actually going to be a day that we don't have any tech ed classes. So they're going to do that Explore OTC thing. And I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it. They're going to do some sort of virtual thing where we're going to set up websites, and some of the instructors are going to go to some of the different high schools around the community. So November 18th, put that day down. So you would still have other classes like general ed classes like math, science, those ones won't be affected. It's just your technical education classes like CIS or networking, you know, those particular ones. So ask a teacher if you're not sure about an individual class, but our class definitely will not be held on November 18th. So we'll have a early start to Thanksgiving. So it's really hard setting up assignments around Thanksgiving. What I did, you guys could send me a message, please do, if you would rather do some things differently. Because around Thanksgiving, it's really hard to know what to do with due dates. Because you could go with the theory and say, oh, I'll make it due after we get back from Thanksgiving so that everybody has the whole break to work on it. Or could say, oh, I'm gonna make it due like on Friday so that nobody has to worry about it over Thanksgiving break. There's good and bad things to doing it both ways, right? Because if you guys don't have to worry about any C# stuff over Thanksgiving break, I think that's good. You've worried about it enough, but I don't want you to forget stuff, right? That's like a whole week, like 10 days almost, you could forget everything. On the other hand, usually if we have something due right after Thanksgiving, everybody sort of forgets about it because it's Thanksgiving and we've never had Thanksgiving for a whole week. It's going to be kind of nice. Everybody deserves a long break. So if I make it due after Thanksgiving, usually everybody forgets about it and then they're kind of in panic mode when we get back from Thanksgiving, remembering that this big assignment is due. So I made the decision, management decision here, to make everything due before Thanksgiving break starts. So you know, with me, I'm going to give you that flexibility. If you want to make one of your due dates be after Thanksgiving, I will be trying to get grading done over Thanksgiving, but I won't hold it against you if you decide you want a break to work on something. So that's going to be up to you. So no, I set those dates because I want you to take the week off. But if you decide that you would rather work through that week to get things all situated, that's fine with me. I just didn't want you to feel like you had to. Questions about that? Does that make sense? Made a decision to be non-decisive. Make you guys decide. All right. So lesson 10, your family table is going to be kind of dynamic. The PDF document, that other textbook that's attached to it, has a chapter that shows you exactly how to do things. Find that section in there and you'll have a really good example. The videos get you most of the way, but you'll still have to look at that PDF document to get a little bit of that selection going. So this week, we have an assignment on link, and you guys have already done link stuff in your textbook. This is just a real quick training activity that kind of brings link into the database world a little bit. So it shouldn't take you very long. Hopefully it'll just clarify a few more things. This week we'll be looking at serializing data. I'm going to look at the overview document. It's chapter 20. Chapter 20 in our C# Pro book, we actually did a little bit of that chapter in C#1, talking about text files and readers and writers, stream readers and stream writers. But the end of the chapter talks about serialization of data. And that's what we'll be focusing on, is kind of the end of that chapter. In our textbook, it shows us how to serialize data. You can think of serializing data as just kind of taking that data and turning it into some sort of like binary stream. I almost think of it as encrypting the data because we're like encoding it. So it's just a big stream of data. So the serialization process that we're going to do in class is we're going to take some serialized data and save it as a row in our database table. In the textbook, they'll show you how to take some serialized data and write it to text files, XML files, and that's really beneficial too. So you'll get a chance to see some different ways to do serialization. In the assignment for serialization, you'll see that you're supplied a Visual Studio project that's already working. All you have to do is get the table created correctly in your database, go through all of the code to get everything functioning properly for you. So you don't have to create this application from scratch. You'll be taking an application and updating it to make it work. So do take a look at that one. Sometimes it can be a little bit distracting to people and they think, oh, I didn't understand that. Well, if you look at the code, it's really not bad. And then finally, the last thing that we'll be looking at this week is adding a full-time component or employee type to our employee application that we were working on. So you guys have gotten your first part of that turned in, where you created the employee table. In this go round, this version of our employee application, we want to create the full-time class that goes along with that employee class, and we'll add a new table to our database to hold that full-time information. So in our demos this week, what did you get you prepared to be able to do that? To add a subclass and a table that's associated with that. So that's what we'll be working towards this week, is getting you the knowledge and the feel-goodness to be able to accomplish these assignments. So you shouldn't be there yet, but we should get there. So let's get started. Our first thing in Discord, let me share the screen here. I am not showing my screen. Thank you, Rich. I am now. In Discord, if you go to our C# server under the Section 101 channels, the in-class programs, this is a zip file of that AutoLot DAL project that we created last time. So if you have the project already that you created, we're just going to continue on with it. But if you don't, you can grab this one. I've got it that I downloaded, so I'm going to extract from this. But when I extract it, I think I'm going to save it in a new folder name, because I'd like to keep the version that I already have. So I'm just going to make it like version 2.0, I guess. And then I'll extract that. Now inside that extract folder, I'll just open the project. And again, if you already have yours, you're in better shape than using this one. Now looking at our project, let's take a look at our AutoLot DAL project. If you remember, we have two folders inside that project, our different layers. We have our data layer. This would be the code that's going to run on our database server type application. If we were to have that kind of hardware separation in our company, we'd be able to run this code on our database server. This is our inventory DAL class. Let's take a look at it to review what we did. DAL, remember, stands for Data Access Layer. And in this code, we set it up so that our class does create instantiation, or it does require instantiation. It is running as a connected instance. Whenever we instantiate here, we're going to be using this default connection string. But we saw the way we set up this code that we could override the connection string if we wanted to when we create a connection. We created just a few methods. Our open connection method that uses our connection string to open that connection to our database server. Our close connection that closes it. We did a method called get all inventory, and this was kind of our big one, right? And in this method, we run a select statement that selects all of our inventory rows. So before you can run this project, you would have to be sure that you had your inventory table created in your database. So if anybody is behind on that, needs help with that, let me know so that we can get that created for you so that you can be doing testing. When we're working with the database stuff, the very first year I taught, it was really weird. When I was here, I couldn't access the database through, we were using an on-site SQL server, and I just couldn't access it from here, from campus. And there was something weird about my account. There's always been something weird about my account. I think that whenever they created my account, there was something going on with Active Directory and something didn't get quite created right, but that's all right. They've always fixed the problems as they come up. But that one, they never could figure out. So I ended up where I had to do all of my testing of everything at home. And then it was super hard to show students how to do things because with my account, it wouldn't work. With their accounts, it would. So we could have code that I couldn't run that they could run. So I know what it's like to not be able to test when you're working on these modules, and it's really hard. So do let me know if you're having any trouble with creating any of the tables or anything like that, so that we can make sure you're moving on. Because we can get something fixed in just a matter of a few minutes that could just cause you tons and tons of trouble. So anyways, in our get all inventory method, we're running that select statement to get all of the rows from our inventory table. We actually execute, well, we set everything up with a using statement to set up our SQL command. And then we set up our command to actually run, execute. And then we start processing all of the data that was returned by our select statement. For each row that gets returned, we extract out the columns for our car object and create an instance of our car object and add it to this list that we created called inventory. Whenever we're all done, we've read in all of the cars, we're going to return that list to our caller. So we can use this get all inventory list from our console application like we did last time, or we could create a GUI application maybe that displayed all of these in a list box and still called this same method. Now the other things that we added last time, we also have a get car method that gets one specific car based on the car ID. We have a method that inserts a car into the table. With our insert logic, we're telling the database, here are the columns, and here are the values to insert into those columns. We saw a really cool thing that we could use an insert auto method that accepted string data, or we could create an insert auto method that was strongly typed that accepted a parameter of a full car object. That's what we call it, strongly typed. All right, and then we set up our delete, our update. So you have some really good example code here. Some of it is stuff that you might need to walk through using the debugger to make sure that you understand what's going on, because it's all a learning process, right? So let's create a graphical interface. We've got all of this code, it was really, really complicated, and we created a console-based client, but it would be nice if we had a nice list box or something to show our users. So let's create a new project within our solution. And I want this project to be a Windows Form app. And I'm going to name it, let's see, so far our project names, we've used Auto Lot. So I'm going to make it Auto Lot GUI client. And then that way we can list all of our inventory information on a window instead of the console. Now, first of all, when I look at my form, I'm going to rename it. Over in Solution Explorer, notice I have my other projects kind of rolled up. I'm just looking at my new AutoLot GUI client project, and I want to rename this form. So I'll rename it form, how about GUI inventory. I don't think I made any typos there. And yes, I want to update everything. whenever we update our form name, we want the designer component and everything to get updated with it. I'm going to click on my form and go change its text property. And we'll call this, how about inventory maintenance? ANCE. We should put Autolot, since that's sort of our company name. It's a really serious, intense car company. Now on our form, I'm not going to start out with a lot of information here. I'm just going to get a list box and add it to our form. And let's give it a name. LSTBX inventory. And then I'll just go ahead and create a form load event that calls our database data access layer and gets that list of inventory. So I'm just going to double click on a blank spot on my form to create that form load method. And I need to add a reference. So if you remember last time, we had to add a reference to our other project because we have everything in those separate folders. So I want to make sure I'm getting my auto.dal. I don't need a reference to that console-based client, just our data access layer. And then I'll add the using statements. Auto.dal dot data operations, and I'm going to need the other one too because models. We're going to be needing to access our car class from our models folder. So now that we've got our references set up and we've got our everything accessible within this project, we know we're going to create a list of cars. I have uppercase car, yep. And of course, we could call this lots of things. We'll call it inventory, since that's what they keep calling it. They've gone a little bit back and forth here on us. Now, where do I want to get that list from? Well, I can actually go directly to our data access layer code. Oops, I'm going to have to create an instance of that. Inventory DAL. Call it our connection, I guess. And we don't need to supply a connection string because our default connection string in our data access layer code is fine. Yeah, Rich mentions in the chat, the way they set this connection up is not static. So when we look at the code that we've got to serialize some data, it uses some static methods. So you'll be able to make a comparison with that. So what do I want to do? I want to call my connection that I just created and get all the inventory. So in our get all inventory method, we were just reviewing it. We saw it was going to return a list of cars. So we should be able to use that method to get all of our cars for our GUI application too. Now I know that we have some people that have been able to attach our list here as a data source. But we're going to use a for each loop to go through all of our car objects to add them to our list box. So for each of the cars in our inventory list, we'll add it to our list box. Is that all we need to do? Let's try it. I need to make sure that my GUI client is my startup project. I could change it up here, but I'll just right click and set it as my startup project and run. Well, I'm getting something. But it doesn't really exactly look like the car that I want, does it? We have a couple of choices here. We could do some different things. First of all, I'm going to check our car class. And in our car class, sure enough, we don't have a toString method. So we could add that to take care of our issue here. So we're running the default system toString and just getting the name of our class. Right? Yes. So what could we do? In our console app, how did we handle that? Let's look at our program.cs and see. We actually looked at that list and we pulled every single column out, create its own list item. So two possibilities, right? You want to create a toString? That seems like the cleanest. Let's do it. I'll make a car string. And then I guess we don't really want a new line. We'll do a tab kind of like they did. We could do a lot of different things. I'll just add each column individually with a tab. One more. I'm glad they like classes with few data elements, right? I'll put a tab after that one just for consistency. And then in our return statement, let's return our car string that we've created and see if we can get a little bit better feedback here. That looks a little bit better. My red color is just a little bit short. Messed up the whole thing, huh? So it would be nice if we had columns and all those great sort of things that we could do. But this works really good for us for a tester. We can tell what we have going on. And we could do some things. So we could add some additional capabilities here if we needed to. How's that look? How is everybody? To which one? The form, uh-huh. Yep, there's that. Anybody at home, any issues? good, 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 good. Okay, so I think if everybody's working there, let's add to it a little bit. In our application, we could create one of those class diagrams. Let's do it. I'm going to go to my solution and see if I can add a new item. And I want that class diagram, and I might have to be, yeah, let's get into a project. I think I have to be in a project. Let's try our GUI client. There it is. So I want to add a class diagram. So here's our design surface, right? So I'm going to drag my car on there. Will it let me? There's my car. Woohoo. I want to expand it so I can see the data items on my car class. So we just really blew the thing wide open, didn't we? We added a whole toString method to our car class. Our car class was pretty minimal. So how could we extend that? Because I want you to know how to extend a class in your database, table-wise, as well as within C#. So for our car class, I was thinking, what if we create an EV class, like for an electric vehicle? And that will be an extension of a car, right? So we have an electric vehicle. We're going to have some new data items that we wouldn't necessarily need to keep track of for a car. So we could do that down here at the bottom. We could create a new class, I think, add class. And I'll create a class called EV. Now notice some things about this. It's going to create this as public access, create this new file, all these things. I better not do it that way because I want to make sure that I get it into this models folder. I think I would. I think everything would be fine, but I hate when I mess up and all you guys are watching. So I'm going to go to my models folder and add a new class directly there instead of being brave. And it'll be my EV class. And then I could go back to my class diagram if I wanted to and relate them. First, let's go ahead and put that information into our EV class that we inherit from the car class. Now that I've put that inheritance in, if I go back to the class diagram and I include my EV on there, oops. Do I have to save or something? Check the code. You can only add items that are in scope. Okay, well, I won't add it right now then. But if I were able to add it, we would see that Visual Studio would put that arrow showing that my EV class inherits from our car class. And that's why it's breaking and not being able to do it. All right, so I'll go to my EV class then and just put the code in manually. I don't want a lot for my electric vehicle. I think that we'll use like a type, and our type will be like whether it's a hybrid or fully battery operated. And let's see, I need some getters and setters for that. I better make it uppercase since it's going to be public. And I'll say you can get it and set it. And then I was looking at what kind of things are important for electronic vehicles. So we should use the battery type. We'll do a getter and a setter. We just want to have enough here that we can tell we're working with a separate class type. Let's go ahead and set up one decimal value, and this is going to be our kilowatt hours expected on this battery. Make that say battery type. Okay, so we don't have a lot going on with our electric vehicle. We'll just add a few little things for it. Let's add a toString. You know how that gets us if we don't have it. So the first thing I want to do is set up a string variable, and this will be our EV string. And I'll start that as our base class toString output. So that should put all that car stuff in there, right? Like the car name and all those kinds of things. And then we'll add more to it. Our type. And our battery type. And as far as I can tell, there's only like one battery type, but we'll be ready in case there's a new one. And lastly, our expected kilowatt hours on this battery. And now in our return statement, we want to return our new EV string that we've built to describe this electronic vehicle. Oop, Aaron's stuck. Sorry, Aaron. Need to make a co-host. So we have our electric vehicle now, and we could create an instance of one, but we need to have a way to save these, right? Because we've put everything in our database, so we better go make a database table to go along with this. So I'm going to open SQL Server Management Studio. And I'm going to make sure I'm connecting to my 151 server. I've got to use my right account because see if I can get in here right. So if I look at my database and expand and find my tables, I have my inventory table. That's the one we're concerned with our cars, right? And so if I look at my columns, just to review, I have a car ID that's my primary key, and my make, model, and pet name, those same things that we have in our class. So our new table is going to be EV for our electric vehicle. We want its class name to match. And our EV table is going to have the same primary key, a car ID. But in this case, we're not going to make it an identity vehicle. We're going to use the car ID that is associated with the car instance of this electric vehicle. When we add this data for this table, you'll see what I'm saying. So let's create our table. Right click on tables and do new table. So the first thing we need is our car ID. And I want to make sure I do it the same as they did in the inventory table, where the I is uppercase and the D is lowercase, because that can get me. And I need to make sure that this is an int data type, because I want to be able to join these using an SQL join. So I've got to make sure they're exactly the same data type. I'm going to make it int, and I will not allow nulls. And then I'm going to click on the key icon to set this as the primary key. The columns that I created are type, and we'll just make this like, I think var chart for 50 is fine. And then we have battery type. Same thing. And the last thing, I made decimal. And I'm not sure if that's the best data type. We'll call it kilowatt hours. And we can say that it's numeric. But then if I look at my numeric data type, get my column properties down here, I don't think I want it to have, I think, is that 0 decimal places? Let's make it have 2. Everything that I saw online for kilowatt hours had a 0 in the decimal places, but they all carried it. So I was like, okay, well, we'll carry it. Okay, so that's all we need, right? This is all we're going to extend our car class by to add the information for our electric vehicle. So if you're thinking about your employee application, you already have an employee. We would just need to add a new table for the full-time type data elements that we're going to extend that employee with. I'm going to save this as EV. And of course, in our database design, we could just add these columns to every one of our inventory rows. You know, it wouldn't be that much extra data, but it would be unnecessary data that really isn't related directly to our car, because it's related only directly to cars that are electric vehicles. So let's refresh our tables list. And we should see our EV table now. Now I want to look at what kind of inventory we have. So let's see, I'm going to open a new query window. And I'm going to select star from inventory and run that. So we have our Volkswagen and BMW and all of these things. I guess we need to add a new car to be like our first electric vehicle. So we'll add one. On our inventory table, what we did last time was we right-clicked and we chose edit top 200 rows. And that gave us kind of like a table area for us to type in. So I'm going to add a new one. I'll make it be a Toyota My Toyota is like midnight blue. I hate to be like just blue, but she's Beyonce. And then Dr. Ford, but she has that, hers is a Beamer. But I guess I think her new one is blue too. And I don't know what she calls it. We could give it a nickname for her. It's like one of these little guys here. Like this one. So it's like this where it's two-tone. So I don't know what you would call that. Let's call it patchy. Because hers is truly electric. Okay. She might not like that name. That's okay. So we've got a couple electric vehicles in here. So let's go to our EV table and do the same thing. I'm going to right click and edit top 200 rows. And number 10 is my car. So we'll say it is a, I think they said HEV, hybrid electric vehicle. The battery type is always lithium ion or whatever. We'll just put lithium. And I don't even know what the kilowatt hours are. I was just looking online. They say we'll go 150. And then Tiffany's, hers, car number 11, is a fully electric vehicle, EVB, electric vehicle with a battery. And hers is lithium. And we'll say that since hers is a BMW, she probably gets more kilowatt hours for her battery. Okay, so now we've got our information in our table about our electric vehicle. Let's create one new query again. And what if we select everything from inventory, and then we want to join our electric vehicle table on our inventory car ID being equal to our electric vehicle car ID. And there we go. Now we see everything. So we've got car ID 10 is a blue Toyota that is a hybrid with a 150 kilowatt hour battery. And car number 11 is a BMW that's a fully electric vehicle with a 200 kilowatt hour battery. So when you guys create your full-time list in your database, you're going to have to go through these same kind of steps. You have to determine what columns need to be added to your table, create your table, add a data row or two to match up with the employees that you already have in your employee table, or add some new ones, and then create a select statement with a join. Now, if we were to get this select statement set up, we want to use it in our code, right? Let's do it. In my AutoLot DAL, in my data access layer logic, right now, sorry, I'm going to scroll here. Let's look at our code for our get all inventory. we have some choices to make design-wise. We can leave this method the way it is and create a new method that gets all EV inventory, and then we would just be able to select just the electric vehicles that we want. Or we could update this one to include all of that information. What do you think? Lots of things we can do. No matter what, let's save this select statement in our code now, because we know that this join gave us just the things that were electric vehicles. So let's save it. I'm going to copy this select statement. And in Visual Studio, I'm just going to paste it up here to the top of my get all inventory method. Not in a very nice way, but I'm going to comment that out. Clean it up a little bit. Because I'm going to need that later. So I'll go ahead and put a to-do in there. Clean it up a little bit. So now I've got my to-do item in here. I know that that's what we'll start on next time. We've created the table. We've got some rows out there. We just need to decide how we're going to implement this in our application. Why don't you guys have some lab time today for, I don't know, Rich, you can put an alias in there if you want. Trying to make it simple. Trying to keep the select statements as simple as possible, because we're focused on C#. So any updates would be very much appreciated. We can do anything better. We all want to know about it. All right, so lab time today for you to work on the application that is due this week. Remember, that one is a data grid, so it's going to work a little bit differently than this. I know that it can just almost be overwhelming to have so many different ways to do the same thing when you're working with the database stuff. So just remember, it's just different ways of approaching that same information, just different classes that are available and different tools that are available to you. So let me know if you have any questions about doing the data grid, or if anything seems totally out of whack, and we'll get it whacked back into place. It's fine, Rich. I would love to know everything that you have to suggest. It's awesome. Okay, I think that I'm gonna close our session, but do let me know if you have any questions, any problems. Lab time, everybody's working okay for this up to this point? We got our tables in? Good, great. We're ready to go for next time then. I will see you Wednesday.